Alright, what's up, guys? This is Jaden, and this is
Jalen.
and today we're going to react to Black Wall Street, Tulsa Black Wall Street, some massacre of black people. It's on serious this time. Let's check it out.
Something terrible happened here. And for
What did it take?
decades, people didn't talk about it.
I was an adult before I ever heard
What
it.
did I ever? Do you ever hear this in like school or something?
No.
No, I never heard this
What's it
before.
on back wall?
It's underrated.
No.
It's underrated.
About it. It was something that
I've heard about it, but
was hidden.
This entire historic community was obliterated.
Bodies dumped in rivers, bodies dumped in mass graves. It was an
It's tough.
absolute massacre.
This story isn't one you'll find in most history books. And almost 100 years later, the facts of what exactly happened that day are still unraveling. So we're driving in what's known as Black Wall Street. It's where one of the nation's worst episodes of racial violence took place.
I just say build it back up.
In 1921, a neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma called the Greenwood District was a bustling community of black-owned businesses. Tulsa locals know that period of Greenwood's history as a kind of golden age.
You can imagine just like an old time downtown. Things like movie theaters, pharmacies, hair salons, and so forth.
They called it Black Wall Street.
It was a mecca. It was a huge success.
But Black Wall Street was also an anomaly. It thrived at a time when the KKK was incredibly active in Oklahoma, and the nation had just been through the Red Summer of 1990.
Can you imagine living in a town where KKK was in their prime and they smuggled
I
and
heard-
burned your junk?
I heard about
Burned
that.
my house, but oh my god, those people were racist, especially in their prime, like in 1900s, bro. Those people, crazy. All right,
They ain't let nobody. They ain't let
they
nobody
had no
slide.
mercy. They just hated all black people. I don't know how people just hate color like that. That's tough.
When white mobs murdered black people in dozens of incidents across the U.S.
There needed to be a sort of match or an igniter tossed on these embers. And that trigger event, was an incident that involved two teenagers. Dick Rowland, 19-year-old black boy who's shining shoes downtown. Sarah Page, 17-year-old white girl who ran an
you hear about
elevator
this song?
down
No.
the building called the Drexel Building. He went to the building, boarded the elevator. Something happened. Sarah Page began to scream. They both ran out of the elevator.
Now, we don't know exactly what happened in this elevator, but a day later, Rowland was arrested and taken to the courthouse. The
I was
local
always screaming,
newspaper
trying to.
ran an article
That's why I don't. Hold on, I didn't mean
claiming
that.
Rowland
That's why.
had assaulted Page. Even though Page refused to press charges, the article was essentially
Oh.
a call to action for whites.
A large white mob began to gather on the lawn of the courthouse. Dick Rowland was in jail on the top floor. A number of black men, several dozen, marched down to the courthouse to protect him, some of them armed. There was a struggle between one of the black men in the small group and one of the white men in the larger group, and things sort of went south from that point.
Hundreds of white people descended upon Black Wall Street
It's not
armed.
even that serious, bro.
It's really
Like,
not
I'm
like,
Black
bro.
residents
Oh my-
withdrew
that was
from
wasting
the
your
energy.
railroad
Friends,
tracks
like, what?
that marked off the Greenwood District. Some of them were armed and fought back, but they were outnumbered by the white mob, which shot their way through. The white mob murdered, they looted, and they set fire to Black Wall Street.
This was the
Look how-
strategy, if you will.
It looked like they bombed it. I'm not even like.
With these successful black communities. The effects were disastrous.
For 2 days, the Greenwood District burned. Martial law was declared, and the National Guard was brought in. By the
They
time
did all of that because they assumed that a black man assaulted a white girl. They blew up that whole city just because of that.
And they had no consequences either.
And they had no consequences back then. That's tough. It's tough.
the massacre ended, Greenwood was in ruins. More than 1,200 homes were destroyed, and 35 blocks
1,000?
burned.
They went serious.
The exact number of
Okay.
casualties is harder to pin down. Some initially only reported that white people died.
How?
Others reported somewhere between 30 and 100 mostly black casualties. but estimates now put that number closer to 300. As for those that survived, thousands of them lived in tent cities in the months that followed, and were left to pick up the pieces of rubble they once called home.
That's sad thing. Imagine just
After the
going to your
massacre,
house and you just see.
the cover-up
See it
Imagine
blow
go
up.
to your house and all you just see is bricks on the ground.
For getting your kids from school, you walk, all you see is freaking just bricks and smoke. Like,
Bro, I would be
I'll start crying.
depressed. Everybody was hooting out crying. Your PlayStation, everything gone. Where? Everything. Your
Rep
clothes.
started. Records went missing from city files, including the very article that started it all. It makes photos from this time all the more important as part of the historical record, but back in 1921, these images served a very different purpose.
So photo postcards like these were pretty widely distributed after the massacre. At the time, they were part of white supremacist culture and kept as souvenirs of racially charged crimes.
Now they're preserved to make sure this part of Tulsa's history isn't forgotten, and they paint a clear picture of how much destruction there was that day. On the postcards, it's called the Tulsa Race Riot, a name that itself sort of erases what really happened.
By calling it a riot. It's a way of trying to rewrite the history, assuming that there were both sides at fault, and that was not the case. I call it a massacre, and I call it that
Right.
because that's what it was.
Greenwood eventually rebuilt, but nearly a century later, there's a part of this story that still haunts the city. No one actually knows
Wow.
where the victims' bodies are.
We got to find our people. We got to put them at rest.
Yeah,
You know, if not, we'll continue to be haunted by what was done so many years ago.
Kevin Ross, a local writer, is one of many.
Oh, did someone say that's why during George Floyd thing where black people were destroying white businesses or something recently? I think it's because of white people destroying their stuff too, so they got revenge. That's an opinion. That might be. I don't know. That's what some people are saying. But I just gotta get that out.
Many in Tulsa descended from people who lost everything in the massacre.
So in this cemetery, there are only 2 official victims of the Tulsa Race Massacre. How many victims do you think there are?
After all these years, I think 300 is putting it mild.
In 1997, the city finally put together a commission to study the massacre and help piece together what happened in 1921. They compiled records and eyewitness accounts.
Bullets were just raining down over us.
They set our house on fire that went right straight to the curtains and set the curtains on fire.
These accounts are especially
Imagine
important
doing
now
that.
because
Like,
none of these
what's your
stories
energy just to
Because
do
you don't
that?
like the color black, really?
And they also provided new information. Some mentioned trucks, like this one, loaded with victims of the riot. One riot witness in particular came forth testifying that he saw bodies being dumped in Oaklawn Cemetery.
PTSD. That just.
This is the area.
Using the survivor accounts, records, and eventually radar, the city was able to pinpoint 3 locations with anomalies in the soil. Only one step was left: to excavate. But it was something the city at the time wasn't up for doing. For many Tulsans, it was a part of history best forgotten and not worth investigating. In some
Not
ways,
worth?
today,
That's crazy.
that sentiment remains.
Kind of waste of money.
Why do you think that?
It's over, it's done.
All right.
But there are clear
He's
signs that the
racist.
city
He's
is ready
racist.
to come to terms with a dark chapter in its history.
Honestly, that's a lot of missing people. People that probably had families.
We owe it to the people whose blood has actually fertilized the grounds of this place.
There was a tremendous amount of racism.
Injustice plus time does not equal justice.
Today, a new mayor is reopening the
Yes, sir.
investigation.
Yes, sir.
A pretty basic compact that a city makes with its citizens is if somebody murders you, we will do everything we can to find out what happened to you and give your family closure. And whether you were murdered yesterday or you were murdered 98 years ago.
The city will be looking into the 3 areas that the commission noted. That process of finding out what lies beneath Tulsa and DNA matching any remains with descendants could take years. The investigation is just one part of a bigger historical reckoning. But the reality is, it can't undo the crimes or the cover-up of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre.
Crazy, one of the worst massacres of all time. That's never.
Conspiracy of silence.
It's crazy how this never talked about. I never heard no Tulsa Black Street, none, until my dad talked to me about it. I never heard none of that. It was never taught in school or nothing. That's crazy. It said like 1,000 homes or something. That don't. The picture made it look like a bomb dropped on their house. That's how
it was
mad
so
they were.
much smoke. But imagine
Imagine
wasting your energy when you could just stay home and chill.
It's not even wasting your energy. It's wasting your energy on something that might not even be true. You feel
Facts though, like you don't know what happened in the elevator. You weren't there.
Like that black man actually got on the elevator and just started killing her. Then all right, but
like all you did was hear it off a newspaper and then you start burning up people's house for no reason. Like what?
Never mind.
Violence that I've ever seen in history.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't already heard, we've launched a paid membership program called the Video Lab for a month.
Alright. So let's go back to the thing. I might not even go back because how weird this is. Alright, so yeah, that was a video. I hope y'all liked it. It was very cool. This, like I said, I've never heard of that in my life. But it is crazy how that's never taught. It's one of the biggest massacres, black massacres I've seen in a little while. So yeah, that was that. No, something interesting, something serious. Yeah. Peace out. Where's this nigga? Alright.